And five, four, three, two, one.
Ignition, liftoff.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Side Hustles and Stuff podcast, episode 5. My name is Yuri, and I'm joined by Keishi.
Hi Yuri, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Keishi?
I'm pretty good. I'm really excited about the SpaceX launch that happened today. And we're recording this on May 31st, so it was May 30th in the US.
It looks cool. Unfortunately, I was asleep at that time, so I did not get a chance to view it live, but I did watch the videos that were going on afterwards.
Yeah, it's certainly pretty inspirational.
So what's on your desk? What are you drinking before we jump in?
Today it's green tea.
Today is green tea. I got, as usual, black coffee from the vending machine with Jido Hambaiki, and I got lemonade. So I guess this episode is brought to you by green tea, black coffee, lemonade, and I'm wearing a hat that says Brooklyn on it, so it's also brought to you by Brooklyn. But more importantly, this is the Side Hustles and Stuff podcast, and if you want to check the notes for this episode, make sure to visit sidehustlesandstuff.com/E5 to get the links to everything that we are going to talk about today. And what we're going to talk about today is, can you be a side hustler? Keishi, can you be a side hustler? Who can and who can't?
It's a very simple question that probably has a pretty complicated answer. I think we'll dive deeper into some of the traits and some of the things that we personally believe that side hustlers have to be at least some sort of successful in executing their ideas.
Guys, so if you're interested in finding out if you're capable of becoming a side hustler, of having your own project, if you always dreamed about it, but if you always kind of wondered, can I do it? Should I do it? Would I do it? Well, maybe this may be the episode for you. Let's jump into part one, Keishi. What kind of person can get it done? What are the qualities?
Yeah, so before jumping into this, I think listening to you, I just want to say, regardless of what comes out as the answer for you in terms of what we're going to be talking about now, just give it a shot and it either works out or it doesn't. But what we're going to be talking about next will probably give you a better idea of where your chances stand.
All right. So, Keishi, what is the first quality that a person should have?
Yes, I think we're starting with a really simple thing, which is whoever's thinking of starting a side hustle or whoever wants to actually do a side hustle needs to want an income source that just goes beyond their full-time job, needs to want a second income source, a third income source, or a fifth income source. And by the extension of it, they also need to care about personal finance to some extent, I'd say.
Okay, so that's an interesting quality or interest to have. But I do know quite a bit of people that have read a lot of personal finance books, but they haven't taken any action or they can't lift a finger. To me, it kind of seems like people also say they want to go to the gym to work out more. As they do with money, they say that they want to earn more, but it's not something that they act on. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it kind of ties back to what we were talking about during the last episode in terms of books and in terms of how they can be useful in augmenting one's thinking and actions, but how they're useless in themselves. So if you're just reading books and not taking any action, then that's fine. We all have our interest. But I think there is a big difference between interest and actually wanting something or actually doing something to get whatever it is that you want. So I think taking the step across that line from being just somebody that's interested in having more income, because I mean, who doesn't want more income, right? Like, is there anybody that doesn't want any more income, all other things equal?
Yeah, but it definitely is a powerful motivator. Money is definitely a powerful motivator, and stepping outside of their comfort zone just to earn more. So I know this would definitely be a very strong motivator for someone who already has a very pressing need to earn more. For example, a family or a father who has to support a family.
I think so. Like even for most people, even making extra $500 or $1,000 a month, it's a huge amount of money, right? So if you're kind of living hand to mouth, or if you feel like whatever it is that you're making at your full-time job is not enough to take care of your needs and for you to be able to invest into your future, then I think doing a side hustle is a great way to try to take care of it.
So the first quality again was cares about personal finance and wants to have multiple income sources. So the next one we have is curiosity and likes learning.
Yeah, I think like we talked in some of the previous episodes, it's not all easy, and especially if you're new to this sort of internet world. So if you're somebody that's working at a marketing agency or that's a programmer by trade or something, then probably a lot of the things are going to be fairly easy to you. But then again, if you're in a completely different field, then you kind of want to start an online side hustle, that there's going to be a lot of things that you will have to learn, and there's going to be a lot of things that you will have to be curious about to be able to figure them out. And I guess thinking back, even if you're a programmer, then there's a lot of things on kind of the sales and marketing side that you will have to learn and figure out, and vice versa. If you're a marketer or copywriter like yourself, Yuri, I guess I think there were a lot of things you had to learn about WordPress and things like that in the beginnings, right?
That's correct. Definitely a lot of WordPress, a lot of coding. Not a lot of coding, but just the basics, basic design, SEO. So it definitely kind of requires you to just jump in and learn. If you don't have that, then you're not going to really get it done in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. In the beginning, even simple things like I want to change the color of my article titles from red to orange or whatever, and even just figuring out how to do that can be pretty challenging in the beginning. And unless you have the drive or the motivation to learn how to do it, then you're gonna have a rough time.
Yeah. Actually, I had an internship a while ago at Groupon, and part of the requirement of the internship was to learn how to make ads and call to action buttons. So the night before the interview, I spent a few hours on the internet looking up Photoshop tutorials on how to make call to action buttons. And I practiced around a bit, and then I showed it off, and then I got the internship. Just a small example.
That's great. Yeah, that reminds me of my internship. Is on my very first day, my task was to make a list of sales targets that the sales team could call and set up meetings with. And of course, I just started copy pasting the list. The guy that was running the company, it was a small startup. He came and he's like, "Did you watch the Facebook movie?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but I don't really remember it." And he's like, "Did Zuckerberg copy paste every single person's information?" And I'm like, I guess not. So then I spent like the next 12 or 13 hours on the train home and at home until like 2 or 3 a.m. just figuring out how to make a script in Excel that would scrape data from like a directory of different businesses. And it took me like 15 or 16 hours, but I finally figured it out, and it was one of the best feelings you can get if you figure something like that out. And it also helped the business for the following few months in terms of being able to generate long lists of targets really easily just by clicking a button or two. So yeah, so I think like Yuri said, and like in this example, you just got to be kind of interested in spending time learning things, and you just got to like doing it and learning new things.
Even if you don't like doing it, you still, if you can apply yourself to do it, that still counts, because some of these things, for example, I don't know, I don't enjoy, like I'll say straight up, I don't like spreadsheets. So I mean, this is stuff that I have to learn, but I absolutely don't find no pleasure in. Maybe with more practice I'll find more pleasure in it, but I don't. This is going to be very quotable. I don't find pleasure in spreadsheets. There is no pleasure.
I do find pleasure in some spreadsheets, but yeah, I think what you just said is a great point, and I think while you do this, there's going to be probably like 80% is going to be things that you won't necessarily enjoy doing, but they're kind of the necessary evil. And perhaps when you're further along down the road, you can start outsourcing them and things like that. But in the beginning, you'll just have to learn, whether you like it or not. You'll just have to learn some of these things, and you will have to do them if you will want to move your side hustle along.
The flip side of it is, even if you don't like it, if you're struggling through it and you do make it work, there is some satisfaction in there. For example, you can hate math, but if you got a problem correct, then you're not going to hate it as much. You'll be like, oh, wow, I did it. So there is definitely some upside. So next up is a quality of people who can get it done. You don't mind working with no immediate results.
Yeah, so let me ask you, how long did it take you to get the first, whatever, let's say 100 visitors to your blog?
I don't know the answer to that, but I know it took me a year to earn 25 cents.
So what did you make per hour? Like 0.01 cent or?
The point is, like, anyone viewing this or listening to this or viewing my situation from a third person perspective, if they were to compare time and effort to the results obtained, every person would say, no, I'm not going to do this. It makes no sense.
Yeah, and I think to kind of tie this back to the very first point, which was about the personal finance and about wanting an income source, I think you really got to think about it as building an asset that will make money for you rather than as working for money. Because if you think about it as working for money, then for the first year or for the first 2 years or whatever, it will be really, really difficult for you, because you'll be working for like $1 an hour if you're lucky, probably. But if you
Yeah.
think about it in terms of like whatever you're doing, it's just helping you build an asset that then produces income for you. Then it suddenly gets exciting. Let's say I start working on a side hustle, and I'll use my latest site as an example. And I've been working on it for about a year now, here and there. And like, let's say it gets to $1,000 a month by the end of the first year, right? Then at that point, it's making you $1,000 a month in revenue, but it's also an asset that's worth $30,000, $35,000. And then when you start looking at it this way, then you're like, okay, so I worked this whole year, I wasn't paid anything at all, but the end of this year, I have an asset that's worth $30,000 on top of whatever I made at my other jobs or at my other gigs or whatever. So
Yeah.
I think you got to stop thinking of it in terms of, oh, I want to make money, and you got to start thinking of it
Mm.
in terms of, I want to build an asset. And then it's the same as building any sort of asset, right? Like, if you want to build a house, it's you will have to spend a lot of time building the house while you will not be able to live in the house. But once you spend all
Yeah.
the time, then you have this nice house that will last you for however long, and that you can start enjoying.
And then you could put to use, you could rent out, you can have an office space where you can use that house to make even more money. But like the whole building process is going to be painful. You're probably going to hammer a nail into your finger by accident. You're probably going to saw something off by accident, and it's going to hurt.
Exactly.
It won't be fun for a bit.
Yeah, exactly. And I would kind of even rephrase this point, because we said that you shouldn't mind working with no immediate results, which I think is true. But I think from the other point of view, I think it should rather be, you should love building things. Because if you look at it that way, then whatever you build, it always takes time with no immediate return to build something. But then once it's finished, it's really satisfying.
I think you have to be able to enjoy working for free. You have to be able to do it for free. And on that same note, on working without immediate results, you must have consistency, because this is one of these things where it's like you have to take a lot of actions over a long period of time. If you're not consistent with it, then there's going to be no results.
That's the other thing. And I think a great example of that is, there's like, if you read around the internet, and even some people that I know, it's like people start a blog, they put up 3 posts, 3 months later or 6 months later, they're wondering why they're making no money. And it's like,
Yeah,
it's because, to go back to the house example, it's like you put down 3 bricks and you expect to be sheltered from rain. Like, it doesn't work that way, right? You just got to lay it brick
exactly.
by brick by brick by brick for weeks or months or whatever, until you have a thing that's a meaningful
A
thing. Yeah,
house.
a house in this case.
So the next quality is you have to be creative and you have to produce. And this I think is pretty interesting, because people that naturally create and produce things, for example, artists, musicians, anyone that's putting out work of some sort, you already kind of have a product on your hands, right? And this is a product that you can push out and sell. I mean, of course, you're going to have to learn marketing and how to send it out to the world and how to build an audience. But the point is, you're creating things that can be sold as products. So you're pretty much one step ahead and one step closer to turning this into a side hustle.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're already creating something, and if you already have some sort of audience, then you're probably already halfway there in terms of being able to make some sort of income from it. Because, I mean, in a lot of cases, the key is just to build some sort of audience, whether it's people that follow you on Twitter or I don't know, Instagram or whatever, or whether it's people that Google is sending to you in terms of organic traffic. But if you have the people, you're already halfway there. And also, if you have something to show them, then you're already halfway there. But again, the important thing here is that
Exactly.
you got to show it to them. So just being creative and just producing things is useless if those things are sitting on your hard drive. And by useless, I don't mean that you're not getting any pleasure out of it. And there are certainly things that you should be doing just to kind of have fun. But if you're thinking of it in terms of a side hustle, then unless you actually take the thing that you created and put it in front of people with some sort of offer, whether that's just telling them, hey, subscribe to my Patreon account and support me every month, or whether it's just a bunch of display ads on your page, or whatever it is, unless there's the action of taking whatever you produced, putting it in front of people, and attaching some sort of offer to it or some sort of product or some sort of service to it, then in terms of a side hustle, it's really useless.
You have to be able to push it out into the world. I mean, the upside is that if you don't have an audience, not a lot of people will care anyway. But it's a very important step towards putting out product and building a side hustle.
Yeah, exactly. And it also comes back to I think again, I think we were talking about this in one of the previous episodes, but you really can't be a perfectionist
Mm,
because whatever's sitting on your hard drive is not earning you money, right? And whatever's out there getting visitors is potentially earning you money. So if you just have like 95 articles that are 85% finished but sitting on your hard drive, they're really useless. Whereas if you have 85 articles that are like 85% okay, they're not perfect, but they're perfectly fine, and you put those out there, then those can be earning you money. So it's better to have mediocre things out there rather than almost perfect things on your hard drive.
that's like the story of my life. I'm the latter. I publish out mediocre stuff.
By the way, we're not telling you to aim for mediocre. We're just trying to tell you to do things and not to stop doing
Exactly.
things for the sake of perfection. You should still aim to be as perfect as possible, but make sure to balance it out.
Yeah, there's a time and place for everything. And in the case of getting up and going, perfection is probably not your best friend just yet.
Exactly, especially in the beginning. If nobody's going to be reading your things anyways, then you might just as well keep churning them out and learning while you do so, rather than waiting for this big idea to hit you. And
Until someone comes along and says, hey, you have a typo in your article,
then you've made it.
then, as has been the case in my experience. All right, so the next quality that we have is you must enjoy losing. And Keishi, this reminds you of a certain person?
Yeah, I think this is like the fourth time I mentioned him on this podcast. So um, Gary Vaynerchuk, who again he says he loves losing, and I'm not of that same very extreme view, and I think he's probably exaggerating to some point as well. But then I also
I
think
think so.
there's a lot of truth to that point, which is I don't think you necessarily have to enjoy losing, but you got to be comfortable with losing, and you got to be okay with just losing a game if you know that you're going to win the battle. Whatever sort of side hustle you're doing, like if you're doing a podcast, then you get enough subscribers, then probably at one point or another you're going to have a bunch of haters. Or if you're doing a blog, then at one point or another you're going to be hit by an algorithm update, or one of the companies that you promote products for will decide to have their commission or things like that, which will kind of set you back. And you just got to be like, oh, cool, what did I learn? And what do I do next to kind of get back to where I was? You got to be like, oh, cool. So I've been knocked out of this place where I was. And so what is the thing that I got to do to get back to where I was and to get even higher?
Currently, what I'm going through right now. Shout outs to Google.
Yeah, I think a lot of people online are going through it right now because Fanon is a bit so there was the COVID-19 which started to get serious in like March or mid-February or something, which essentially slashed the RPM, so the revenue per thousand visitors for display ads for a lot of industries, and it also wiped out traffic for some industries, especially travel. Um, and then like a few weeks back, Amazon decided to cut their commission in almost half, or in some cases in more than half, for many product categories. So there's a lot of people online right now that feel like they've been losing. And I really think this is
Yeah.
also a situation where it really shows who's really committed to this and who was kind of
Mm.
just enjoying it while it was good, but who doesn't have what it takes to just kind of dig himself out of the hole and get higher than he was before the losing started. The streak of losing that's
Yeah.
been following us for the past few weeks started.
Loss does motivate some of us to bounce back. I think it's there's that saying, you only miss something when it's gone. You don't cherish something until you lose it. So to that extent, I quite understand and quite relate to that. That's the way we human beings are. It's just the nature of things.
Yeah, I think so. I think, and again, to go back to Gary, I think in a way he probably really enjoys losing, and myself as well. It's like, so for example, when my aviation blog was hit by a Google algorithm update, there was really nothing I could do to kind of restore the percentage of traffic that was lost. But it was what motivated me to start looking for a more freelance consulting clients, and that's turned into a nice kind of stream of income by this point. And then again, when the COVID-19 hit and things like that, I started putting more effort into one of my other blogs, and then that blog is making more now than the aviation blog was making at its peak. So again, it just every time you get knocked down, just make sure that you do something that will get you higher than the place you were knocked down from.
So not losing is kind of related to our next point. Then is you're not scared of competition. Actually, I'm quite competitive, but it's a trait that I've been suppressing for a while. I don't think anyone has been challenging me. Or actually, let me cut that out. I don't want to get challenged. I don't want someone to be like, all right, I'll give you a problem. Again, so the next point kind of relates to the point of losing. And then our next point is you must not be scared of competition. And this is something I like because I think to some extent I am a competitive person. You know, if you told me that you're going to go to the gym, I'll be like, the hell you will. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure that my muscles get bigger and
Well, I
better
got
than
good news
ever.
for you. I think you're already winning, and you'll be winning for quite some time. So no worries about that. I don't think I'm a competition in that regard. So so you can sleep calmly. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think you just got to understand that there are going to be people doing the things that you want to do. And I think it kind of matters when you're getting bigger. But I think it especially matters in the very beginning, because for myself and also some of the people I know, just when I was looking for sort of what to start a blog about and things like that, and you think you have this great idea, and then you start looking around and there's like 30 different blogs on the same topic. And I think that's where a lot of people get discouraged. But I think the flip side of it is just look at what the other people are doing, look at how you can do it better and more consistently and kind of at a bigger scale, and then just go for it. Because if you think you've got an idea for, let's say, a blog topic or for blog niche, and you go out there and you try to look for it, and there's 0 blogs out there on the topic, or there's one, or there's almost nothing out there on the topic, then chances are that it's not that you're a genius, it's just that the topic's not making any money, which is why nobody's actually pursuing it.
To that extent, I've been checking my Google Analytics, and every once in a while, I'll see a competitor blog linked to me, and I'll go back and see. I'll go to their website to see where exactly are they linking me from, and it's most likely an internal link somewhere they have me saved because they're using one of my articles as inspiration to beat me out or to build content based on what I have already. So this kind of competition definitely exists. People will try to swipe off of you. I think you sent me a few sites as well where they swiped your
Yeah, but
articles
those I don't
wholesale.
worry about, because those are just idiots. I hope that word's allowed in this podcast, but those are just idiots that think that if they scrape websites and just completely duplicate them, they're gonna win. But I think they'll just have to enjoy losing, because I think Google is not that stupid. But I think in terms of the competition, I think it's more the people that are actually putting effort into doing something and that are actually doing sort of the thing that you are. And it's kind of like playing chess. It's just like finding a keyword that whoever's kind of your direct competitor is not targeting, and being the first one to capture it, and finding more and more of those keywords. And
I had in my case, since I do language blogs, I had a competitor blog. I think they did like, X ways to say hello in Japanese. So I made sure to one up them, be like, I think there was like 20. And I was like, all right, let me do 24, 25. Let me make sure I beat the hell out of them. I don't know if I got better ranking on that exactly, but I knew like I was really fired up to just put out more and beat him out on that specific key phrase.
yeah, so I think to kind of just summarize this point, you gotta learn to live with the fact that there's gonna be other people doing whatever it is that you're doing. And I think it applies to any sort of business, not just blog, or not just YouTube channel, or not just any sort of online side hustle, but even in kind of the brick and mortar world. And you have people that are like, oh, I've got this great idea. And then they look and they're like, oh, this guy's already doing it, so I should just throw it out the window. And to those, I said, no, just go and beat the hell out of them, and just put effort into the idea. And if you're good at it, then you're gonna win.
And if you're not good at it, at least you can capture a slice of their market anyway. So it's not exactly a zero sum game.
That's a great point. I think that's another very good point. It's like a lot of people are just looking at this thing and they go like, "Oh, I want to be number one in Google." But the thing is, you can fight hard to be the number one for like really competitive term, or you can be like number one for 100 not so competitive terms, and then like number four for like a couple of really competitive terms. You're still gonna
Yeah,
make a lot
that's
of nice money, even if you're not number one for whatever. Let's say in this case, even if you're not number one for podcast, you're still gonna make a lot of money, even if you're number four for podcast, or even if you're number six for podcast.
okay. With that being said, the next point is you have to have passion or strong interest for a certain industry, product, or field. And I think, Keisha, you're a great example of that when it comes to aviation. At the same time, we can take a look and see a lot of business people in today's day and age also had a strong passion. For example, Elon Musk, there was Steve Jobs, and they ended up pursuing that passion and putting products out, right?
Yeah, I think so, and I think my view on this really changed over the last maybe year or so. And I used to be of the kind of I really thought that you have to have passion for something, and you have to be really interested in something to be able to turn it into a side hustle. But recently, I've been kind of looking at it from the other way around, and I don't necessarily think you have to be passionate about it, but it certainly helps, especially in the beginnings.
I think it definitely helps, especially for the long term, though, right? Like 5 years in, 10 years in, what if you have a change of heart? You're gonna realize, oh no, I sunk these 10 years into this one product. So that kind of person will end up with regret, but someone else will be like, I've been doing what I've always wanted to do.
Yeah, I think definitely passion helps in the beginning, and it certainly was a case with myself as well, where I was passionate about aircraft, and I started my blog around aircraft, and I believe that was the case with you as well, right? In terms of your niche.
Yeah, languages. Although, I would actually, to some extent, I do agree. Like, it is an interest, but it's not like a obsessive stay up until 1 a.m. in the morning interest.
Okay, but it's still something that you were kind of interested in and something that you enjoyed doing.
Exactly, because part of it has to do with the Japanese language, and since both of us are located in Japan, I kind of need it anyway, so I should be learning it, and it's my vehicle in a way.
Yeah, that's interesting. So how about right now? Let's say you were about to start a blog tomorrow, or start a new side hustle tomorrow or next week. Would you still stay with the topic, or would you kind of try to venture outside that? Or
I would definitely go outside. I would definitely go outside just because I guess it's always fun to jump into something new. And like we're not all one dimensional. I think you can agree we have a lot of interests. You aside from aviation, there's plenty more that both of us are interested in. And as such, we want to explore those other areas. So, for example, one passing thought I had in my head was I want to do one on Japanese toilets because they don't exist in other parts of the world.
yeah, I got bad news for you. You've got competition there, as you know.
Well, it's a passing thought. Maybe I'll entertain it, but
I can sell you my
definitely,
unsuccessful site about toilets if you want. It's gonna be a bargain.
listeners. By the way, if you're interested in getting a site about toilets, be sure to visit sidehustlesandstuff.com and submit your interest.
Your bid, but your is gonna be bidding pretty high, so make sure you bid higher.
Here's your chance to have your own side hustle right now.
Yeah. So to go back to what you were saying, I think at some point, especially once your side hustle kind of starts growing, there's a chance that at least in my case it was like that. I'm not sure about you, but I just started enjoying the idea of building a blog and kind of turning that into a standalone business. And it got to a point where I don't necessarily have to be passionate about or have a deep interest in the subject, because I kind of enjoy the process in itself. But definitely still helps to be interested in the subject itself, because it will help you with like trying to find good keywords to target, good topics to cover, and things like that.
All right. Next point is you must be a realistic optimist. So, Keishi, what do you mean by realistic optimist?
Yeah, I think again it kind of ties back into the competition point, right? You just gotta be optimistic that you can beat the competition, or that you can not necessarily beat the competition, but that you can kind of carve out their own niche, carve out their own space on the internet, while being realistic about the fact that if you go out there and start writing things that other major sites are writing about, then you're probably not going to succeed. So it's a balance between being optimistic about, yes, I can make it, but also being realistic in terms of at any given stage that you are with your side hustle, what it is that's within your
Yeah.
capabilities and what is kind of still further away
Yeah.
from what you're able to do.
So for a simple example would be like, instead of gunning for the most competitive keyword, you go and aim for low hanging fruit, like, keywords that get searched maybe 10 to 100 times a month, and you start hammering out articles based on those.
Yeah, and I think you've got an interesting example in this case because you have two sites that are kind of in the same space, right? And one is fairly established and the other one's relatively new. So I believe that you probably have different strategy in terms of what articles you write for each site and things like that. Just because by their nature they're very different in terms of what they can compete for and what they can't.
Well, actually, with the more established one, the first thing I did was and the thing I'm still doing is aiming for low hanging fruit and those sparsely searched keywords, because that's how essentially I establish my dominance first. And then, and I do the same thing on the other site, but with the with the older site, nowadays I'm much more brave and crazy, and I'll go and try for to aim for more competitive spots. So essentially, it's a mix of both. But I think you have a better chance of ranking once your site is established and it's old enough.
Yeah, exactly. I think with your older site, it's the level of what is realistic is higher than what's realistic with your smaller site. So whatever would be fine to target with your older site, which is more established, it would be just nuts to try to do the same thing with your newer site that you started just recently.
Exactly. That's a good point. So definitely don't aim for the stars just quite yet. You can dream for them, but start making small headway. There's no point in trying to gun for number one when you're still in the thousandth place. Go for 999.
I think it also kind of applies to the income that you're expecting from the site, doesn't it? You have to be optimistic and you got to think that, oh, it's going to make some money, but you also can't be like, oh, I'm going to make $2,000 in the first 2 weeks.
More like you're gonna make a buck, or maybe even less.
Yeah, in the first week or first few weeks, you're not going to make.
How long did it take you to make your first dollar?
That's a good question. Probably. It really depends when we start counting, right? Because if we look back at when I bought my first domain with the intention of kind of starting an online business, then it's like years and years, probably half a decade.
Wow.
But if we actually look at an example where I kind of did put in consistent work, which is one of the things that we kind of listed here as criteria, then I think then it's much shorter, but it's still kind of in a month or yeah, probably a few months.
Yeah. So it's definitely not a week or two or like a 3 week attempt. This is definitely a month's worth of work. All right. So, what kind of person can get it done? One, you must care about finance, personal finance. You must want an income source. You're curious. You like learning. You don't mind working with no immediate results. You can stay consistent. You're creative. You can produce. You enjoy losing. You don't mind competition. You have a strong interest or passion, and you are a realistic optimist.
Yeah, that sounds like a good place to start.
So let's move on to the next one. Who can get it done? So Keishi, I have some thoughts of like examples of the type of people that can get it done, even if they think they can't. So my first example is anyone that goes to the gym.
That's interesting. Why do you think so?
Not only the gym, it also kind of applies to physical labor, because it's a place where you have to propel yourself and push yourself to go and lift things. Your mind says, all right, I'm going to do this. Your body carries it out and you lift it. So in a way, it's like if you're able to get it done, and it's still considered work, that's why it's called working out, even though some of us find pleasure in it, it still requires that push. And I think for side hustles, if you're able to go into the gym and get work done for like and be there for 2 hours, I think you'll have no problem sitting down and knocking out work in another area of life, and that includes side hustle.
Yeah, that sounds good, and it's probably also just again, I don't go to the gym even though I should, but I assume that a lot of people that go to the gym, they just go through all these motions of working out, even though they see kind of no immediate results beyond just getting sweaty. But then, like a year later, you look in the mirror and you can kind of see the results, and it's really good to see the results.
Yeah, but it comes down to the ability to go in and do work. It's like when you're lifting dumbbells, it's not like, oh wow, this is fun. It's just like, and another one, and another one, and another one. Kind of like what we're doing when we're, putting on blogs. Oh, and another article, another article. Let me request this another thing from the freelancer.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just I get yeah, I guess just being able to get the work done. It's whatever the work is, then just having that quality is what can really make it or break it when it comes to starting a side hustle and actually
Agreed.
turning it into something that grows. Do you have any more examples of people that, or of
The
types
next
of people
person,
that you
yeah.
think can do it?
So the next person is anyone that who is already producing any art, creative work, as mentioned before, whether you're an artist, musician, designer, filmmaker, poet, writer, anything where you're publishing work, where you're putting work out. The whole point is you already kind of have a product on your hands. I have one friend, he learned how to draw comic style, and now he's applying that to t-shirts, stickers, and everything, and he's at the same time selling these. So essentially what you have is you have the ability to create product. What do you think about that?
I think that's interesting. I think on one hand, I absolutely agree with what you're saying, but also on the other hand, I think there is a lot of artists out there that are finding it hard to actually start a side hustle even if they want to. And I think it kind of ties back to the perfectionism part that we were talking about before. Do you have any thoughts on that?
We covered it quite well when we said you should like let work out. uh Mediocre work published is better than perfect work unpublished.
Yeah, I think so. And again, I absolutely agree with the fact that, like you said, if you're an artist and you're already out there doing things, and you're also probably comfortable with putting things out there in front of people, as we said before, you're probably already more than halfway there. So yeah, I absolutely agree that if you're doing any sort of if you're producing any sort of art and creative work, then you can definitely get a side hustle started.
The next person who can get it done is anyone who has a friend who's doing side hustles or producing any kind of content. And the reason I say this is because it's a lot easier to get inspired by friends and work with them rather than do it all by yourself.
Yeah, I agree with this, and I would kind of expand this. And I think if you enjoy, I don't think necessarily has to be a friend. I think it can be somebody that you follow online, and there's a lot of people that share kind of their case studies, how they build their site step by step, and kind of how much they make, or actually how much they didn't make in the first few months, and then how they started making more money down the road. And in that case, you kind of have to be careful about differentiating between the people that are legit and the people that are the kind of get rich quick scammers, I guess, right?
That's true.
But yeah, I think it's definitely good if somebody that you know personally has succeeded with a side hustle. And I think I mentioned this to you, but one of the things that actually motivated myself in pursuing more of kind of affiliate income, because a lot of my income was from ads, was actually seeing your screenshot of your Amazon Associates earnings
Uh-oh.
on your Facebook a while back. So it definitely helps to know people that are actually doing the thing. And I think, like you said, you kind of limited it to friends in the beginning, and I think that's really good because you kind of know that they're legit. Whereas if you're looking around on the internet and you see somebody posting their Ferrari or whatever, then it's really hard to say if they're legit or if they're just renting the car so that they can impress you, so that they can sell you a product.
That's true. I also think that personal connections are much more motivating. I just think that in my case, anytime I started doing something, more times than not, it was because of someone else. Like, for example, running in the morning, I had a roommate and eventually he fell off, but I kept going. It makes it easier. It's like, it's as if someone has invented a on ramp for you to get on and go with them. And I think it's this case is easiest with friends. So even if they're not exactly successful with whatever they're doing, the point is if they're doing something, just by knowing them, you can easily get inspired. And if you share the same interest, you can kind of go on that on ramp and join the run with them.
And I think also in some situations it creates some sort of like a natural accountability system, especially if your friend's succeeding and you kind of decide to follow the same path. And let's say your friend's building a blog and you kind of decide to build a blog as well, and then your friend's like climbing these stairs and getting higher and higher, and then you kind of feel like you got to keep up in pace with him.
Yeah.
So I think it definitely can be both motivating and inspiring.
All right. Next one is anyone who's majoring in almost anything except for business. This is my thought, but Keishi, what do you think about that?
I just read it now for the first time, and I'm trying to gather my thoughts because I really wonder why you excluded people who majored in business, considering that we both did major in
Oh,
business, right?
I just think that majoring in business is like majoring in self-help. Uh, you read all these case studies, but you're probably better off in actually doing it than reading about it. So anyone else who's majoring in other things like, say, STEM, or anyone who is in a much more practical vocation, they can instantly apply that and start building. I guess I see it more as builders can transition much more easily and creators can transition much more easily into business because they already have a product that they're going on. Whereas people that are studying business, they're not really doing business. They're learning about how the business works, but they still have a whole long way to go as to how to create a product and put it out into the world.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting argument. Although at the same time, I would argue that you can probably find people that can do it both within the business field and outside the business majors, and it really comes down to the individual at the end of the day. But yeah, I can see the point because again, I think if you study business, then you kind of start thinking you know about business just because you studied business. Whereas if you studied whatever mechanical engineering, then if you start a side hustle, you don't kind of go into it thinking, oh, I know how to do this and it's gonna be easy. And instead you go into it kind of not knowing what to expect and being more willing to learn, perhaps.
Yeah, that's a good point. So you have one more on the list, right?
Anyone who has the will to do it. So I think that's one that can be argued a lot too. And to go back to having the friends or having the kind of the online mentor or whatever you want to call them, having people online to follow, it's there's a lot of people that say anyone can do it. And I think kind of at the very basic level, yeah, everyone can do it. Like probably everyone can learn how to use WordPress. Everyone can learn how to find keywords, or everyone can learn how to use a camera and record videos that get views on YouTube. But I think just because everyone can do this, the different steps that it takes to do, that everyone can do the whole thing in itself, in its kind of complexity. So even though I've written down here into our notes that anyone who has the will to do it, I also said that very few people are likely to actually do it. So I don't know, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think anyone can do it, like a lot of the gurus online try to claim, or do you think there's only a kind of select group of people that can actually do it?
I don't think there's a select group of people. I think, well, gurus are trying to capture an audience to sell, right? So anyone that's putting out a product and just, any success business guru motivational guy should be immediately written off as a, what is it called? The oil?
Snake oil salesman.
Yes, should be immediately written off as a snake oil salesman because they're probably trying to sell you something. Again, and just because someone succeeds in one area, it in no way dictates your ability to succeed in that area, because it's a very complicated process. Like you said, to someone it's like, to us it's like it's easy to start a website, but to someone else it's like a mile and a half of trekking. But to that extent, I do think that anyone can get it done to some degree. Like, for example, you have people that will scale a website from like 1,000 visits a day to millions and be a superstar, whereas other people probably don't want that kind of, or can't handle that much responsibility, but they can probably get it to 1,000 or 10,000 and they could be satisfied with that.
That's a good point, actually. I think what you just said to me, what it says to me is that anyone can create something that will improve their life. And for some people, that might be creating something that makes $1 million. For others, it might be something that creates an extra $500 a month. And I think for a lot of people, and it's just a great thing to have an extra $500 a month. I mean, it's a rent payment, it's your groceries for the month, or it's your car payment for the month, or whatever.
It's your student loan payment.
Yeah, like in your case, like you were mentioning in one of the earlier episodes, it helped you pay off your student loan. Yeah, that's a very good point. I think very few people are likely to probably make millions of dollars out of it, and but that's the case with everything. But probably, like I said, anyone can do it to some extent and create something that they'll be happy about, or that will bring them more money in their life than they have now, or that will improve their life in one way or another.
Yeah. I also think that it doesn't require any extra intelligence or special genetics or special traits that to that extent, because if anything, the traits are what you develop when you start and you continue with the side hustle. So for someone who's listening to this, they're like, I'm not consistent, or they say, oh, I don't really have a strong passion, or I'm scared of competition. I think once you dive in, these are all traits that you can develop within the process of doing the side hustle.
Yeah, exactly. I think I totally agree with the fact that it doesn't require any sort of special intelligence or any sort of special knowledge or whatever. I think these are all things that people with enough will can learn to do to some extent or another. And yeah, it really just depends on what your life is like now, I would say, right? Because I think it really depends. Like if somebody has 2 kids, then it's probably much more difficult for him to commit a lot of time to a side hustle than somebody who's in college right now. So
Yeah.
I think that there's that part that certainly plays a role in kind of how easy or difficult it is to get started. But other than that, I think just putting in the time, and it's no rocket science, right? Is it?
The only rocket science going on is today's launch.
Yeah, that was great. And just in case you're probably listening to this on a different day, but we recorded this on May 30th US time or May 31st Japan time. And just as we're speaking right now, I think there's two people, Doug and Bob, who are heading to the International Space Station right now. So I hope they have a safe journey. I think it will still take them a few hours. But did you watch the launch today, Yuri?
I saw the video, but but again, I was asleep. I know you were up at 3 a.m. watching it live, right?
Yeah, it was like 4 a.m. or something here in Japan. I somehow woke up naturally without alarm clock. So I was probably really excited to be watching it. But yeah, I think there's nothing more amazing than just hearing like liftoff and ignition, like we said in the beginning of this podcast. And it was, yeah, it was just great to see. And even just thinking right now that there's people out there that are floating like, what are 100, however many miles above the Earth, and just heading to the International Space Station to meet people that are actually living in space
Yeah.
for a long period of time. It's just, to me, it's really fascinating.
I guess that's why I kind of say among all the degrees, I would put business last, but like science and engineering close to the top because those are the kind of things that I think would propel society.
Yeah, that's a good point. They're probably also though not they're probably going to propel the society further by working for SpaceX and for NASA than doing a side hustle. But yeah, they're amazing people, and it was really great watching the show.
Just hope there are more launches to come just to inspire the public to dream bigger and aim higher
Yeah,
because the space, as they say, is the great unifier.
yeah, I think just going to space for whether it's for exploration or even just figuring out things that we can later use down here on Earth, it's great. And it's also great that kind of, this is going to sound cheesy, but I think it's also great that we kind of as humans can go out there to place which is not the Earth. And at that point, we're all just humans, right? We're not like Americans and Russians and Japanese and Slovaks. To the
We're human.
yeah, to the outside, to the universe, we're just humans.
I think Carl Sagan had a lot to say on this.
Unless there's other humans out there, then we're the Earth people, I guess. But still, Earth people is better than being fragmented.
So, guys, are you meant to be a side hustler? Can you be a side hustler? We do hope that this episode gave you some thoughts on who can get it done, who can't get it done. For the most part, we are of the opinion that everyone can get it done to some degree.
Anyone can get it done to a certain degree, whether that means $100 a month extra, $500 a month extra, or $40,000 a year kind of full-time income, or like $1 million a year. So everyone can do it to a certain extent, to an extent which will improve their life in one way or another. Because I mean, I was so happy when I got my first regular $100 a month extra for my website. It's like 2 nice dinners or 3 nice dinners a month for out of the website, which was great in the beginning.
So, guys, if you want to start your own side hustle, be sure to visit sidehustlesandsstuff.com/hosting, where you can get a great deal on Bluehost. It's a hosting service. All you have to do is buy a domain, buy hosting. Now you have your own website or blog up, and you can start putting out your work into the world. Start building an asset, start building a side hustle. Visit sidehustlesandsstuff.com/hosting. And thank you for listening in to this episode. This is the Side Hustles and Stuff podcast with Keishi and Yuri. Thank you for stopping in. Be sure to subscribe and like. And if you're listening to this, if you enjoy this, leave us a comment. And if you have a friend who's already doing a side hustle, be sure to reach out to them. One of the best ways to get motivated and get started is to link up with someone who's already doing it.
Yeah, that's a great way to end the podcast. Thanks for listening. And again, remember, right now there's 2 people out there heading into the space, or they're already in the space. So if that can be done, then you surely can at least start a blog.
Thank you for listening, guys, and we'll see you next time.
See you next week.
Be sure to visit Side Hustles and Stuff. Again, Side Hustles. This is my Russian pronunciation, and stuff.